Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. Delve into two more true and compelling accounts of journeys into parallel universes. From a man haunted by years of memories of an event that his family insists never happened, to a girl who slips into an alternate life she might have otherwise lived. Such stories invite us to question the very foundations of our existence and our place within it. The non-existent knee surgery. Malcolm Whitaker was your average American teenager growing up in the suburbs of Chicago in the early 2000s. Though his family struggled financially at times, with his father Paul being the sole breadwinner, Malcolm had a relatively normal and happy childhood. That changed towards the end of 2007 when his father started complaining of persistent pain in his left knee that was severely impacting his ability to work. After months of worsening symptoms, his father finally went to see an orthopaedic surgeon in March of 2008. She diagnosed him with severe arthritis and degeneration in the knee joint, recommending surgery to provide relief. Paul's surgery was scheduled for May 2008 at Midwest Orthopedics at Rush University Medical Center. In the preceding weeks, a collective anxiety hung over the Whitaker household. Malcolm's mother Mary was especially distraught, breaking down in tears frequently as she worried over the risks of the complicated procedure as well as the financial stress they would endure. Paul would be out of work during recovery, and they would also incur a substantial medical debt. At just 16 years old, Malcolm felt the weight of responsibility to support his parents during the difficult time. He accompanied his father to all his preoperative appointments, listening carefully as their doctor explained the details of the surgery. A complete knee replacement that would require months of physical therapy before Paul could return to work. The day of Paul's surgery was tense. Malcolm waited with Mary in the surgical waiting room, both clinging to each other for comfort as the hours ticked by. Finally, the doctor emerged, smiling and declaring the procedure a success. The weeks that followed were filled with Paul's grumbles and groans as he diligently worked through physical therapy while confined to the couch, his leg elevated. Malcolm frequently kept his father company after school, admiring his perseverance through pain to regain mobility. By the end of 2008, Paul had recovered sufficiently enough to return to work. Over a decade later, in 2019, Malcolm was now 27 and living in Denver, while his parents had remained in Chicago. He was visiting them for Thanksgiving when, over dinner, his father mentioned his left knee had been bothering him. "It could be related to the surgery you had back in 2008. We should call a doctor to take a look," Malcolm suggested. Blank stares met his remark as his parents and extended family insisted no such surgery had ever taken place. Malcolm was baffled. He had vivid memories of sitting with his dad in the doctor's office, of his mother weeping at the dinner table, of keeping his father company through weeks of recovery. How could none of them remember? Malcolm pressed the issue repeatedly over the holiday weekend, growing more and more disturbed. His father Paul pulled out old medical records. There was no documentation of a knee surgery ever being performed. His mother Mary kept insisting Malcolm must be confused or misremembering, but he stubbornly clung to his version of events. By the end of the weekend, his family had decided Malcolm must be experiencing some sort of strange false memory, and that maybe he had been overstressed at work and needed to talk to someone. Malcolm returned to Denver disturbed and distrustful, cutting off contact with his family for several months as he grappled with the inexplicable disparity between his memories and reality. It was not until Malcolm stumbled across online discussions of the Mandela effect that he found a name for what he had experienced. The Mandela effect being a proposed phenomenon whereby large groups of people shared false memories of events that had never actually occurred and which implied some kind of flip between supposed parallel universes. Could Malcolm have slipped into a parallel universe where his father never had knee surgery in 2008? Or had his timeline somehow rewritten itself around him, erasing the event from history? There was no rational explanation, and yet the vividness of Malcolm's memories refused to dim. He began recording everything he could about his recollections before more of the details faded. He also tried reaching out to his father's doctor, who to Malcolm's awe and relief was in fact an orthopaedic surgeon practicing at Midwest Orthopaedics at Rush. However, she was unfortunately unable to legally disclose any records of her patients. Although he considered asking his father to call up, he at this point felt quite uncomfortable in doing so. It also seemed rather futile, as all existing evidence seemed to overwhelmingly point in the direction of the surgery never having taken place. Reconnecting cautiously with his family, Malcolm finally accepted that his version of the past simply differed from theirs, and he ceased pushing the issue. Malcolm also began connecting with others online who had similar tales of misaligned realities, joining a community to share stories about the mysterious Mandela effect. While Malcolm continued to question his own sanity at times, the undeniable realness of his memories would not allow him to accept the surgery as some mental concoction. Something extraordinary had happened, though he had long realised he would never have an objective confirmation of this. Gradually, Malcolm found peace with the ambiguity, not only embracing and accepting, but being inspired by the strangeness of his altered history. The vivid memories of his father's non-existent knee surgery served as a rare and exotic gift, awakening within Malcolm a deep wonder and curiosity about our shared, complex and malleable existence as humans. A life that could have been. In early 1999, 11-year-old Judith Carpenter's life was turned upside down when her mother Lisa separated from Judith's stepfather Harold. Judith, her older sister Katie, and her two cousins Becca and Sarah, who were living with them at the time, left their lifelong home in rural Alabama and moved several hundred miles northwest to Wichita, Kansas. Judith's older brother Jason, who was in his early 20s, had met a woman named Stacy online and moved to Wichita to marry her earlier that year. When Lisa decided to leave Harold, Jason urged her to move the family to Wichita, where he had found happiness. Though hesitant to uproot the girls' lives, Lisa hoped a fresh start in a new place would help lift her depression. The move was hardest on Judith, who was just starting to find her place among her peers in Alabama. She had to say goodbye to her tight-knit group of friends and leave behind the only home she had ever known. But Judith was determined to keep an open mind. She recognised that her outgoing and adaptable personality was well suited for making new friends and exploring a new part of the country. Judith's first weeks in Wichita were rocky. She was enrolled at a local elementary school several weeks into the fall semester and struggled to break into already established friendship groups. But Judith's infectious laugh and thick southern accent soon charmed her classmates. She joined the choir and softball team, discovering talents and interests she never knew back home. By winter break, Judith felt like she was finally starting to belong. In December 1999, nearly 1 year after moving to Wichita, Lisa decided it was time to go back home to Alabama. Her mental health had deteriorated over the past months, and she wanted to reconcile with Harold, who said he would support her recovery. Though Judith had grown to love her life in Kansas, she understood her mother's decision. Now 12 years old, her main concern was her family staying together. She also knew that stability would help her mum heal. The move back to Alabama in early 2000 was almost harder than leaving. Judith had to once again say goodbye to all her new friends and activities. She wondered if she would ever feel fully rooted in one place. But upon returning to her former school and reuniting with her old friends, Judith experienced a warm homecoming. She rediscovered the familiar rhythm of small-town life and traditions she had always loved. Her friends welcomed her back with open arms, eager to hear about her big city adventures. Judith settled back into town over the next year, but she often thought back fondly on her time in Wichita. She wondered how her newfound talents and interests might have blossomed if she'd stayed. Though she was happy to be home, a small part of Judith would always feel connected to that brief chapter of her life in Kansas. But in March 2001, Judith, now 13, experienced something unexplainable, something she still cannot fully make sense of. While waiting in the lunch line at her middle school with classmates, she suddenly felt an intense wave of vertigo. Her ears began to ring and her vision faded to black. Moments later, the fog cleared from Judith's mind and her vision returned. But instead of seeing the familiar cafeteria, Judith found herself back at her school in Wichita, surrounded by friends she had not seen in over a year. 2 friends Judith had made during her time in Kansas were chatting and laughing with her, as if the previous year had never happened. Somehow Judith intuitively understood that she had slipped into an alternate reality in which her family had never moved back to Alabama. Her memories from the past year in Alabama faded away, replaced with vivid recollections of the previous year continuing on in Wichita. These classmates had become Judith's best friends. Her life there had progressed and blossomed in ways she now suddenly implicitly recognised. But just as Judith was orienting herself in this new reality, the intense vertigo and ringing ears returned. In an instant, she snapped back into the moment she had left, still waiting in line at her middle school in Alabama. No time had passed there at all, though Judith's mind was reeling. She asked in a daze her classmates behind her, "Am I back here with y'all now?" They gave her puzzled looks, unsure of what she meant. Judith had the profound sense that she had briefly crossed into a parallel world, one where her family's story had diverged and led her down a different path. The experience shook her, leaving more questions than answers. She chose not to share the story widely, worried others would think she had lost her mind. But Judith knew what she experienced was real, even if she could not explain it. She could still envision that lunchroom in Wichita, clear as day, and remember how it felt to have her old friends beside her again. Judith did not know if she would ever get answers about why or how she slipped between realities, however briefly. But the experience expanded her mind and showed her how life can take unimaginably unexpected turns. Judith shared her unbelievable account with a couple of close friends, but expectedly neither could relate. One friend, Shelley, was enthralled by the story and joined Judith on a quest to understand it. They stayed up late reading books about physics, the paranormal, and the supernatural. Though Judith found comfort in Shelley's open mind, she stopped short of sharing the experience more widely. She feared being dismissed as crazy or attention-seeking. In her late teens, Judith grew less fixated on explaining her experience through fantastical lenses. She began viewing it simply as a thought-provoking reminder that life can always surprise us and change course when we least expect it. Though the experience remained confounding, it no longer seemed frightening or isolating. In fact, it gave Judith courage to embrace new chapters and opportunities with an open mind. Now in her 30s, Judith holds her unusual but formative adolescent experience as a cherished memory. While she may never fully comprehend what happened that day in 2001, she feels privileged to have glimpsed, even for a moment, a life that could have been hers. It taught her to appreciate each unexpected turn along the winding road of life